You are welcome. She said, yeah. And she took a loaf of bread, and gave it to the girl and said, eat that one and use it to block your womb. The girl said, what kind of joke is that, Mama? Yeah, I'm just joking. The bread is for you. And stupidly, the girl ate the bread. And from that moment onwards, she ceased to menstruate. At first she thought she was pregnant, only to discover no pregnancy. And this went on for a long time. It's in a town called Oyo. When God decided to pay a visit to that town, we had a program there. The lady heard that we were coming for the program, so she decided to fast and pray. The very day we were to arrive, she fell asleep while praying and had a dream. And in the dream, she saw a group of doctors coming in, operating on her, and they began to pull a string. At the end of the string, there was a loaf of bread, very black. After they finished, they sewed her back and left. She was terrified because when she woke up from her dream, the bed was wet because she had started menstruating again. The last thing I heard about her, she has many children now. Now, I don't know, there might be just one fellow here who has been bound by forces of darkness. If you will do yourself a favor and shout that name that's above every other name. May your yokes be totally destroyed tonight in Jesus' name. So when he's seated, he's in control. When he stands, enemies scatter. When he begins to move, the ground trembles. When he's passing by, he distributes miracles. When he arrives, prison doors are open. Then what happens? Number 6, when he enters in. The moment he steps in, darkness flees, because he himself is the light, according to John chapter 9, verse 5. John 9, verse 5. So when he comes in, everything associated with darkness must go out. And several things are associated with darkness. Sickness, for example, in Matthew 8, verse 14 to 15. Matthew 8, 14 to 15. He came into the house of Peter, saw the mother-in-law sick of fever, and touched her, and immediately she was made whole. When he comes in, death and sorrow must flee, according to Mark chapter 5, verse 35 to 42, Mark 5, 35 to 42. The moment he entered the house of Jairus, the only daughter that the man had who had died, and people were weeping, and then came to the weeping because the child came back to life. In Luke chapter 5, verse 1 to 7, Luke 5, verse 1 to 7, we found that when he stepped into the boat of Peter, the man who had failed all night suddenly became a success. When Jesus comes in, everything associated with works of darkness must depart. Some of you probably remember the testimony of a man, a very wealthy man, big businessman, had 14 cars, but then had a quarrel with his wife. And the wife said to him, by the time I finish with you, you will trek in Lagos. Now, I mean, he thought that was a joke. How can I trek? I have 14 cars, and I have plenty of money in the bank, and business is booming. Well, but he didn't know who he had been sleeping with. To cut a long story short, because we've been talking to him to give his life to Jesus, let Jesus come into your life, let him come. He's been saying, go and talk to the poor. Don't bother me. The day he came to the church, he had 50 kobo left in his pocket. Only one car left. And he says, sir, I have 50 kobo left in my pocket, and 50 kobo was still some money in those days. I have a decision to make now. If I use the 50 kobo to buy fuel for my car, I have no food to eat. If I use the 50 kobo to eat, then I will trek like my wife said. And we said, but we've been talking to you about Jesus. He said, you don't have to say much now, I'm ready. He gave his life to Jesus Christ. Less than 2 years later, when he was sharing his testimonies, he was dedicating 2 big mansions in Lagos. Because when Jesus comes in, everything associated with the work of darkness must go out. And I am confident that God had asked me to come here today because there might be 1 or 2 people who have been struggling, working hard and failing because unseen forces have bound their hands. Some people who have been struggling to make progress and they couldn't move because unseen forces have bound their legs. But if today these people will allow Jesus to come in, I'm sure they'll be free. And if you want him to set you free, will you shout that name loud and clear? So when he's seated, he's in control. When he stands, enemies scatter. When he begins to move, the ground begins to tremble. When he's passing by, he distributes miracles. When he arrives, prison doors open. When he steps in, darkness must go out. Then, number 7, what happens when he abides? Because that's where we are going. Emmanuel means God with us. God abiding with us. Not just passing by, not a casual visit, but is now coming in to stay. That's the meaning of Emmanuel. When we have Emmanuel, then joy abides. Psalm 16 verse 11. Psalm 16 verse 11 says, in his presence there is the fullness of joy. So if it's abiding with you, then there will be fullness of joy. Why? Because if it's abiding with you, tragedy will not be permitted to visit. If tragedy comes, you will chase it out. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 8 to 24. 1 Kings 17, verse 8 to 24 tells you the story of the widow of Zarephath. That was the widow who came to the rescue of Elijah when Elijah had no food to eat, and Elijah kept on staying in the house. Then one day, death decided to pay a visit to the house. But what they didn't know is that God was abiding in that house. At the end of the day, death was chased out. I can give you several other instances, but you can see that I'm rushing because of time. Several years ago, I was going to conduct a crusade in Port Harcourt. And as I was getting ready, I heard God say to me clearly, you will go and stay in the house of so and so. I say, yes, Lord, because he's my commander-in-chief. Because I could easily have asked the question, Lord, why? Because when I go to a town to hold a crusade like that, I don't stay with strangers. I want to stay in a place where I can have plenty of time to pray. But God said, go to his house, go and stay. Yes, Lord, I know him. He's a man who is well known for assisting the work of God. So I phoned him. I said, my daddy says I should go and stay with you. Of course, he was jumping for joy. When I arrived, he brought his children to greet me, and the firstborn was a very handsome-looking young man, so we became friends. The crusade was going to last approximately 1 week. One day when I was going for the crusade, the children were returning from school, and I asked the father, where is my friend? I said, sorry, your friend is in hospital. He's dying. Why? Somebody gave him poison in school. So I said, all right. And the moment he said that, I heard God say, that's why I asked you to go and steal.